Kylie McBeath, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Such an honor, Sam. Love being able to connect with you in this space.
I'm so excited because, as we've just touched on, there's so much remembering that's taking place for both of us right now, but I also feel as a collective. And so I think it's a beautiful time that we're connecting today.
Yeah,
Mm.
same. It's definitely a time to remember who we are, what we're capable of. And yeah, I feel that in that remembering, there's just such a big opportunity for us to shed all of the conditioning, all the mask, and all of the distortion around who we've been told we are, like even just from the cultural landscape of the story, of the people, that I'm like, that's so far from who we actually are and why we're here. So yeah, lots of remembering. Happy to be here in the remembrance.
I love that because I talk about that even like in every intro of my podcast. It's like this is a space for people to come back to who they actually are, not who they think they need to be. And
Mm,
it's like a fucking journey to get to that point of even realizing that how we're showing up in life. Like, are we showing up at a place of being who we are? And so much of your journey that I followed is about that, is and it's constantly going through deeper levels or layers to get to that point. And I'd love to know what's really alive for you right now in terms of remembering your core.
yeah, yeah. You know, I got the download 7 years ago, Sam, to write the book Her Journey Home. And that was the title. It was like Her Journey Home from Rock Bottom to Rebirth. And now as I sit with it, and it really is coming into full life, full form now, I'm like, this book has been writing me. Like, I am just here as the vessel. I feel like I'm having to, well, I'm not having to, but I'm being invited to just keep going deeper and deeper into those layers that you so beautifully expressed. Sometimes it's easier than easier said than done, that's for sure. Because I've definitely been, especially last year, I was so angry. I was like having a freaking temper tantrum with the universe and my soul. I was like, what the heck? I was like, I've already gone through so much. Like, what do you mean you want me to go through another initiation? Like, I'm tired, And it was like, sorry, you didn't come here to live a basic, not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, you didn't come here to live the normal status quo life. So stop fighting and get to work. So last year, my big initiations and the ones that are kind of still sinking in and coming into form have to do with reclaiming the feminine principle. So for me, what that means and what that looks like is reclaiming and remembering the feminine in myself and in the collective. And the feminine is is our emotionality, it's our body, it's earth, it's mother, it's sensuality, it's sexuality, it's sustainability, it's the holistic ecology, it's spirituality, it's the mystical, it's the nonlinear, it's all of the things um that yeah, make the feminine feminine, right? And most of my life I considered myself a father's daughter. I was like a daughter of the patriarchy. Like, hyper productive, hyper masculine, in that like I was going to be able to get to a place where I felt like I had power. And really what I was seeking was freedom, right? Freedom from the systems, freedom to do what I want to do. And in order to do that in our system without getting into codependent patterns is create your own create your own wealth and hustle, 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 hustle. And that was not working for me. And so I I actually hit a breaking point last year and my whole body shut down. And I had zero energy. And it was like almost like I felt like I was going to die, which is not always, Sam, the greatest place to find yourself in. But it was like, okay, if something doesn't change, like you actually will die. Like that's what it actually, like my life force was running on probably 5%.
Mm.
So I knew things needed to change, but I didn't know to the extent in which I was being invited into change. And really, when I zoom back out, what was happening is I was being invited to unhook from the old paradigm. So patriarchy, capitalism, colonialism, racism, like just like the massive matrix we've been living in for 5,000 years on this planet. And I was hooked into that system. And in the rupture with Mark, what I really realized in that rupture wasn't just Mark, it was also Mother, but it was also my attachment to the old way of being, old way of operating in a system that is broken and dependent on my self abandonment for its survival. So for me, what I've been doing is reclaiming my own sovereignty, doing my own personal healing work, but also standing for collective liberation,
Mm.
because I realize I'm a part of a whole, and I think we're also being invited into the reclamation of community and getting into right relationship with all of humanity, with the circle of life, with Mother Earth. And in order for us to do that, which is where I'm at now, we must reclaim um, the feminine within, as well as come back home to our bodies, come back home to the wisdom that lives right here in our very vessel that we've been disassociated from, fragmented from. And now, where I'm at in my body, it kind of has been a little bit of a journey all over the place, but I'm doing a lot of work in remembering the wisdom of the womb, our sacred sexual organ that is the portal of life, and doing the work I need to do to go deeper into that womb wisdom and to awaken this beautiful portal that is filled with so much wisdom that I feel like I'm just getting started on another magic carpet ride into, I don't know where it's going, but it just keeps getting more mystical and magical as I go deeper and deeper into my body. So, reclaiming the feminine principle by reclaiming the body as sacred, the womb as sacred, the feminine as sacred.
Oof. Okay, so that like pierced through my heart, and that like started to bring up emotion, and I feel it. I feel my body start to move into surrender because my jaw starts to quiver. And then I was like, as you started talking about like this collective remembrance of community, and that it's not just you're working on your healing for you, but for the bigger collective. Like that's what pierced my heart, because I feel that so deeply as well. And there's so much of me right now that's transitioning into community, but also living on land and also being away from this, and it's like this thing that I keep running into conversation around, or it's not just me, it's like this weird sync, like there's so many people that I'm noticing are moving into this. And also the parallel here is like my journey as well of the womb space. And I remember when I for some reason picked up this book, I'm pretty sure it was literally called Womb Wisdom, and I read the first one chapter of the first one paragraph of the first page, and I just burst into tears, and I didn't even know what I read, but I just burst into tears.
Wow.
And every part of all I could feel was my womb just like completely lit up. And so I've been in this confusion, or this practice, or this like, I have no idea what it is, but it's just sitting in the space of being with that and
Yeah.
recognizing the magic and the literally the wisdom that comes up out of it. It's fucking profound.
It's so profound.
Ah,
I was sitting in ceremony in conjunction with the Four Peoples, and the Four Peoples are four indigenous tribes out of the La Sierra Nevadas and the La Sierra Nevada mountains out of Colombia. They are considered the Four Peoples because they've never been displaced by colonization,
wow.
and they are on this planet to remain in communion with Mother Earth herself. So their whole work is about listening, honoring, and living out the original principles that humanity was given at time of creation. So I was in ceremony with them. No big deal. Just like rewind all the way to the very beginning. And one of the leaders said something that literally, Sam, I even just thinking about it right now with you, I'm just like, I cannot believe how potent this statement is. But she said, the womb, in the West, we've been taught that the mind kind of runs the show, right? Change your thoughts, change your life. We've heard that our whole freaking, I feel like in the personal development world, like way too much. But their from their lens and from the original principles, the womb informs the heart and the mind. So it goes up. It goes from womb to gut to heart to mind. And so if you don't actually heal and restore internal order in your womb and do the work of healing that sacred organ, you'll never find congruency in your body. You'll never actually find internal order or peace or harmony, is how we describe that. And for some reason, when she said that, I was like, oh, no wonder, no wonder intimacy couldn't actually be birthed in the way that I know is possible, because I hadn't done the work to integrate that material in my womb. And
Mm.
until I feel safe there, and until I feel clear there, then there's so many blocks that we can't even see, because we're not even in that part of our bodies. And I say this with so much compassion, because it's, we live in a world that unfortunately a lot of distortion and a lot of abuse and a lot of violation takes place in our sexual organs for men, women, or however you identify. And collectively, I think all of our bodies feel that. And I think a majority of us are living in semi disassociated states to avoid feeling the pain that's been repressed due to all of the abuse and violation we've experienced over the last 5,000 plus years on this planet. So be gentle with yourself. That's what I'll say as you reawaken and kind of go deeper into these waters, because these are the deepest waters in the body, the womb. And everybody has like an energetic womb space. So even if you've had a surgery, or if you identify as a male, there's still that energetic womb portal of creation that all of us have in our energetic blueprint. So we can all tune in to that and do this work. So that was one thing that was said, that really blew my mind. But also the other piece that was said was, how we treat Mother Earth is how we treat women. And I was like, what? I was like, they're like, look at how Mother Earth is being treated. She's being exploited. She's being violated. She's denigrated, conquer, like domination, control. Same things happening to women. And until women actually stand, like, and I know this is a process, but until women actually reclaim that feminine principle, which is life is birthed through woman, she is the sustainer of all. And that is like the most sacred. Until that's remembered by us, we can't even model that in the I guess I'll say in this world with men or with anyone.
Oh my
So that
God.
is our job, to remember and to hold that bar of respect and reverence for who we actually are as daughters of the earth, as a physical representation and complete mirror of Mother Earth.
Do you think that starts with women doing the work themselves here, like in order to change, anything external? I talk about the inner experience, obviously.
Yeah,
But that specific thing that you're saying, do you think that starts with women first?
100%.
Yeah.
Until, so this is kind of a newer wave of information that's being given to me, so I'm still integrating this, so be be gentle with me here. Is how it's been given or shared is, since women have this deep bond with Mother Earth as a representation, as a daughter of the earth, like for instance Mother Earth also has the cosmic womb and the portal, and she also gives birth, right? And same for us, like we have a womb, we give birth, we are more connected to um, the earth because of this, and we can draw a lot more strength from that deep connection. And with that remembrance, we can hold stronger in the feminine principle to allow a deeper, I'll say, opening, but
Mm.
also remembering of the sacredness of also Mother Earth, as all the elemental beings and all of humanity. So the original blueprints of for woman was a woman is here like as a, like their sole responsibility and spiritual kind of responsibility was the nurturer and protector of all of life.
Mm.
So the children, the planet, the earth. And when we're adults, we do that. We protect children, we protect the planet. And we remember, like, without the planet, there is no species. You know, and you're seeing a lot of children kind of speak up around this right now on the planet because they are coming in with, like, if we don't change something, we're all like, there's none of this left. So I do think that it starts with women needing to reclaim the feminine principle, but men are also being invited into this work. And I don't want to create, you know,
Mm.
a gender division here, because that does not support us at all. We're actually being but there is definitely a massive imbalance on the planet between the masculine and the feminine energies, and that's why there needs to be the reclamation and remembrance of the feminine principle first,
Yeah.
because until that's remembered and consecrated, so we keep moving into a space of destruction because no one's actually standing for Mother Earth. No one's actually standing for humanity. No one's actually protecting the children, you know, in the ways that we're here to do. I know that's a
Right.
lot.
Yeah, and it just blows my mind, like the constant language you can put to my experiences. But um like I said, like recently I've been in that very hustle, like achieving patriarch system as well, right? And only the last couple of years of unraveling these layers, but more so in the last month or even recently when I sat with the grandfather medicine, which is a very masculine holding, like hold that you feel like you're in like a hug. Although this one kind of slammed me a little bit harder, but I had this like this feeling that I've never really quite had before around that nurturing maternal instinct kick in. And I literally had the womb, like I literally had a rebirth experience. Like I felt like I was having something happen. But
Wow.
I had this whole this maternal instinct that just kicked in around being a nurturer and a protector and a mother of sorts, and like and remembering that part of who I am and that softer part, but also the power that streams through and the strength that I have as that woman. And you're literally
Yes.
putting words to that around us remembering that we're daughters of Mother Earth, but also that we get to be nurturers of the children and of what's coming forth. Also,
Absolutely.
what it's brought up is this sidebar of how does this correlate, do you think, to our inner child?
Yeah. So we have clearly on this planet. I mean, gosh, there's so much to say about the inner child. There's a lot of attachment trauma on this planet, um, and for various reasons. And I think one of the biggest reasons is because we were born into a system that doesn't actually honor attachment,
Mm,
mother-child bonds, and or doesn't honor humanity or life in the way that is nurturing, right?
mm,
So because of that already split when we come in, um, it really creates some complex cultural trauma that uh, causes deep feelings of mistrust. I can't trust this world. I can't trust my parents. I can't trust anybody, right? And when you can't trust like anything or anybody, it's kind of, I mean, you, of course, the inner child is on, you know, constant alert
yeah.
because they're always having to watch their own back. So this is a really big invitation to do a lot of what is now being called, which I love, is this rechilding work.
Mm,
You know, I've heard reparenting, but I like rechilding because I think there's an opportunity here to come back home to these parts that have been exiled, that have not been nurtured, that have been neglected, that have not received that nurturing, mothering love and attunement that that soul and little child came in here wanting and desiring and needing, you know? So for me, this work was foundational. Without my capacity to sit with and hold fragmented, frightened parts of myself, my inner child, I mean, I'd just be spinning in circles, right?
I
Because
100% agree.
it, and so for me, somatic experiencing therapy was actually a game changer here.
Yeah.
And somatic experiencing therapy, for those that aren't familiar with this body of work or healing modality, is a body-based healing modality that focuses on healing at the nervous system level. So really allowing touch therapy, and also in conjunction with other types of talk therapy and visualizations, allows you to get back into the most fundamental layers of attachment that um, that need to be healed,
Mm.
but also felt and witnessed. And how it has been shown or modeled for me is that when there is that trauma, what happens is the nervous system goes into either the hypersympathetic, so like fight or flight, or freeze. And freeze is like the parasympathetic arm where we just kind of collapse, we withdraw, or the fawn response, which is the people pleasing. So we're constantly organizing around other people's needs and intuiting what we need to do in order to maintain our safety. So when that happens and we aren't given the opportunity to carry out our survival response in the way that the nervous system was designed, it gets stuck. It becomes frozen energy in our nervous system. So it's like all of this life force energy gets kind of frozen. It's almost like having one foot on the brake and one foot on the gas pedal. That's what it can kind of feel like in the nervous system. And in somatic therapy, it opens up a safe enough container to go back into those parts that are stuck, that are frozen, that haven't completed their original cycle, to be held and witnessed, but also integrated.
Hmm.
Like, so if it's frozen, you now have the opportunity potentially to unfreeze and thaw the nervous system by moving into a flee response and then potentially a fight response. And the reason you didn't as a child is because if you did fight back or you did run away, you would, you wouldn't be safe, right? So there's reasons you have these responses as well. So right now, many of us on this planet are in this kind of Stockholm syndrome situation where we're kind of frozen and stuck into this very, like, I almost call it like a psychopathic consciousness that is very anti-life, anti-feminine, anti-earth. And it almost is like pro-machine, pro-linear, like it's almost like pro-death. It's weird. It's just consciousness that just doesn't align with what I know is true
Mm.
and possible for us. So we've been in it for so long, though. Like, we've been in these systems and operate like these ways of this story of separation, this story of us versus them, this story of we need to control everything, for so long that we forget that this isn't actually um, the only story.
Yeah. I far out. This is so good. I definitely like can relate to that, and also like the trapped somatic work was the thing that really helped me with the trapped anger and that intensity of emotion that was stuck in my body and feeling like it wasn't okay to experience or feel or express. And it helped me release that and then find the layer underneath that, which was that feminine like essence that wanted to shine through. It was like almost like there were so many shells that were just there that needed to like I needed to press through. And what I found was even like now, so being able to access any of that emotionality is to feel safe in my body to do so. What have you found, and this is a question that I get asked a lot,
Yeah.
what have you found is the key in order for us, if there is a key, to feel safe in our body to be able to do this work?
Mm. Well, I think that layered in that it really depends on what you've experienced and or what you're carrying in your body. And so even just asking your body, like, what do I need in order to feel safe? For me, I needed a practitioner. I
Mm,
needed somebody to hold the container because I wouldn't go to the places I knew I needed to go without somebody anchoring in with a secure kind of base for me um to trust. Kind of had to like restoring trust again, like back to that trust piece. Without this secure um person and attachment, I can't go into the places that I know I'm being invited into. So for me, that was vital, and also the safety piece, um, reconnecting to clean anger. So my holy fire, holy rage, if you will, has completely transformed the way I operate in so many ways. Because for me, I was shut off from anger at a very young age because it was not safe in my home environment to be angry because potentially to more pain, so you kind of shut that down, right? And when I reconnected to that energy, which is a protective energy that says like, no, you can't do that, or it's like, it's like the inner protective mother that we all need when we're being abused, whether it's verbal, whether it's emotional, whether it's sexually, whatever, from culture all the way to in the family system, in
mm,
every regard. So that energy is what actually allows us to um, see and name where a boundary is being crossed, where we're being violated, and actually set and honor that boundary. And when that hasn't been modeled or it hasn't been safe, that's why you see kind of the abuser abusee, where the abusee can't get away from the abuser because it's like keeps moving towards it, and you're like, why are you moving towards it? And it's because it's familiar,
mm,
right? And that's really unfortunate, but you see a lot of this in our culture. We're moving towards the very things that aren't supportive, and you're like, this is confusing, what's happening here? And
mm.
it's like, oh, it's because there's a pattern that's operating, and that pattern um, can feel, although unsafe, can feel familiar and therefore safe. So reconnecting to clean anger,
Well,
life changing.
well, that's actually like what you just said. I need to pause on that. That's actually gold. Like the what actually feels unsafe is what actually feels safe
Yeah,
to us if we aren't repatterning that.
yeah,
Oh, and that's why we okay, and so that's why we may spiral, or we may go back to the very thing that's hurting us, or we may like stay in situations or homes or environments or relationships or things that aren't serving us because why? Like what's the thing? What's the tipping point?
why do we keep doing it?
Yeah, like why do we keep doing that, and then how do we stop doing that?
Yeah, because we keep hooking in, right? We keep hooking into an old familiar system,
Mm,
and uh, there's a lot of work that has to be done to not hook in. It's so much, Sam. It's it's becoming, what's illuminating for me right now in my life is it's so much more like the layers here of unhooking from toxicity, from abuse, from really unhealthy dynamics, is requiring us to step into so much soul sovereignty and remembrance, because it's like if you do it in one area, you do it in all areas, right? So you almost like when you start to question in your relational dynamics, where you're like, wow, this pattern right here, what's happening? Why are we stuck in this dynamic, and why can't we get out?
mm.
And it's because it's a trauma loop, and until you can almost externalize it as well, like what's actually, what am I hooking into, and
Do you
how
have
can I
like a
stop?
specific example of that? Like of
Yeah, I was just thinking in my head about that actually. Yeah, for instance, so I'm going to use I'm going to use codependent, uh a codependent kind of hook.
Mhm,
um so for example, um there's a couple in a relationship, and the partner is trying to, or say they're inviting, um like to do something for you,
mhm,
like I don't know, pay for something, like pay for the car, pay for the house. And you tune into your nervous system, you're like, is that like, does that feel good? And and sometimes the other person can be like, can already automatically feel that that doesn't feel good because there's an potential. I'm just going to use example. When that person made that offer, it's coming from an unconscious hook into an old system of obligation and expectation. So I'm going to do this because when I do this, I'm hooking into an old system that says you owe me something or I'm expecting something from you. It's like a passive, like manipulative control mechanism. And so if this person is used to taking, but not understanding or seeing that there's also another agenda, which is potentially manipulation and or expectations and obligations that they're not aware of, they can kind of find themselves in this kind of dance
Mm.
where it's like, then this person gets mad for this because the partner that took that isn't doing something that they want them to do. I'm just using an example. I'm not sure if that's the best example, but it's almost like um, hooking in old ways to create codependency
Mm-hmm.
by using manipulation and control
Because
tactics.
then that would make them feel safe that that person isn't going to leave them and then recreate
It's
an abandonment wound or something like this.
100% that's exactly why they would do it.
Yeah.
Because if I hook them there, then they need me
Mm.
and then they can't leave me. So it's not coming from an authentic place of generosity. It's coming from a wound. It's coming from pain, from that abandonment.
Oh my God, this is so good. And this reminds me of something else, like even something that I experienced recently, and you're probably familiar with this because in the learnings of the masculine and feminine energy work, a lot of them will talk about this. But so recently I had a dynamic play out where I have the connection with this masculine essence, right?
Yeah.
And I felt this impulse to share something that was just like purely in the moment, impulsive, like sharing my heart because of, a conversation we'd had recently and da da da. I just wanted to share this experience. It was coming from this like bubbling overjoy of like, oh, my whole body's just like, share that because it feels right. And automatic responsiveness felt really good, a beautiful exchange. A couple of days later, I'm like sitting in the space of like need, attachment. I really want to chat to this person. I want this, like, I want an excuse. I'm looking for a way to like latch on. I'm looking for a way to connect in, like, and like, it's almost coming from this manipulative place of like, a needy place. And so I find my story and then I go in, no response for like days. And it made me check myself really fucking quick. I'm really glad I learned that lesson quick, but around like that, the reciprocal of that, like the person on the other end of that can feel where that intention is coming from and where that place is coming from. And I'm so happy that it played out the way it did because I learned really quick, oh my gosh, that was coming from a wounded place and this attached place. And the response that I got was a beautiful mirror of where I needed to go. But that's what's happening on an unconscious level all the time, is that you can
All the time.
feel it.
You can feel it. Everybody can feel it. And you're right, the energetics of it are very real. And so when you can start to see, which I really acknowledge you for the amount of awareness you had of like, oh, like what's coming up, and this is coming from this place of like, I don't want to be alone, or I don't, whatever it is, or I'm feeling this and I don't want to feel it, or I want to escape myself. All of those things are completely valid. But when it comes from the intention's not clean,
Mm,
or is coming from a wound, it usually can be felt by the other side and is responded with also their wound,
yeah.
which is like, I don't want to hook in on
Yeah.
that. I don't want to be a part of that dance. Like, holy crap, that feels like a lot, and then the overwhelm, and then they get, and so it's like you kind of create this dynamic until
Yeah.
you can actually name it and be like, okay, this is what's happening here, and
Yeah.
then share it,
And
and
then
then
I
that
think,
disarms it.
yeah, and yes, exactly. And I wanted to like complete that loop too for people listening, because other people will be like, well, then what do I do from here? And it's like the naming it thing is like, for me, was enough to realize,
Yeah.
okay, like now I know when that comes up in the future, I'm going to pause on that, and without taking the action and moving through it, I'm probably just going to go, oh, here's that thing again, if it happens to come up again.
Yeah.
And then I get to do my own stuff. Like before I take action and hook in, I get to not hook in and have it, and there's like a choice that happens. And so I think
Yes.
naming it is key, and then having the awareness around when it shows up and what you get to do. So using that as an example, if I was to come up against this again, what would you, or if you were to, like, if you were in my seat,
Yeah.
and you were to come up against that, what would you do to not latch on, not hook in that next moment?
Yeah, I love the awareness is key. But if you do latch, because guess what, you're going to at some point. We all have to learn our lessons, right? You'll start to notice the feeling and the sensation in the nervous system. So there's a few ways to do this, and for me, I'm not one to shy away from like naming my stuff.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's like, hey, like I just realized, like I checked in and this was coming from this place. And I reached out because I was feeling this, and this. And I just want to clear that so that so we don't get hooked into that old dynamic that I don't want to get hooked in, and either do you. So it depends on the container and who you're dancing with at that time, clearly. But I think too in that is like getting really curious around what's driving the need to hook, and like do some work around that piece, that part, and almost remother that part back home of like, hey, we're okay, we're safe, like I've got you. Like we don't have to um, hook in those ways anymore.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a lot. These are
It's a
big
lot.
ones. I'm like,
Let that
oh,
sink in for everyone. Just like, whoa. And this is like, I love what you said at the start, because I'm like here for it as well, which is like as much as there's so much sometimes like intensity and a lotness and heaviness and like it's just so, it just feels so big. It's also what I'm here for, because I actually don't know how to explain it. It's just like there's not anything in my being that's just like, well, don't do it, like just don't do it. I'm like, I'm not here for that. and
no.
and I want to like, I'd love to get your side of like why you are who you are in this life today, and like the joy and the fulfillment that it also brings you, because
Mm.
like, there's a lot, and to be committed to the work that you're doing, and the way that you show up to life. People can be like, holy fuck, like why do they do that? And so why do you do this?
It's a great question. I asked myself too. I'm like, wait, why did you sign up for this? This is like this is a lot. Um, Here's what I'll say though. Ah, I have such a deep connection to my purpose for being here on this planet.
Mm,
Like, I am very clear that I am here to reclaim the feminine principle. I am very clear that liberation and sovereignty are just guiding principles, and why I continue to show up every single day. But to be honest, Sam, I have a lot of fun. This world is like, I love flirting with reality. Like my
ooh, I
life,
love that.
actually, it's not that I don't go through massive initiations and I'm not getting rocked, but it's also like there's that piece, but there's also like I'm fully surrendered and I trust and know that this is a part of the process to get me into um a new get me across a new threshold where the world I get to experience is more mystical and magical than any world I could even think possible. And that just continues to be true for me. So
Yeah.
every time I surrender and trust, I am blown away with what's on the other side of that death and rebirth. I'm like, oh, this all makes sense now. So for me, it's like I'm just in a dance constantly of like, I don't know what's next. And from that space of curiosity and openness, I don't really want to ever know. I always want there to be like 80% unknown. because living in the unknown for me is something that I used to be deeply afraid of
Mm.
because of the lack of integration with my inner child and kind of some of the more foundational layers of safety. But now that I have that and I've remembered and I've restored and integrated those pieces, I'm like hands up in the air and I'm like, this is the magic carpet ride of all times. I'm not saying that to bypass reality because if anything, Sam, I know the darkest of dark that happens on this planet. I've sat in it myself. I see it all around. I'm not denying any of the darkness that currently exists on this planet. There is a lot of pain. There's a lot of abuse. There's a lot of violation. Sorry, peeps, but there is. And only in my metabolization of the darkness can I even open up and have the capacity to be in the light and the joy. And that's why I'm here, to anchor in a new frequency that really opens up a new paradigm of remembrance and of restoring our sacred nature and who we truly are. So it's that fire that lights me up, but I'm so divine. I'm so supported on this planet that it just feels like this is why I'm here.
Yes, a freaking beautiful answer too. I love that so much, and I would wholeheartedly agree. It's like and I think that's another reason why I'm personally here. It's like to like feel fully. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
experience the depths and the darkness, and how much I'm willing to sit in that space, because you have no idea the magic that's on the other side of that. That is like so profoundly incredible, like that you just, it's so delicious, and it's that ability to want to go to the either extreme, and I just have no capacity and interest to sit in the spectrum that is so small that most of society chooses to sit in, which is fine, but I've come this time to not do that.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned and what I'd love to ask you about is when you have the willingness and the courage and the bravery to sit in the depths of your own darkness, what is your uh what allows you to stay there, what allows you to move deeper into that, what allows you to touch the depths of where you've never been before.
Mm. I'll say I'll say well, there's a few things that help me. I'll be honest. Um, I think again the deep connection I have to soul and to spirit. Like I I know that some people might not resonate with this, but I know that I'm being supported and guided on my path. So in that there is a full trust and surrender and release into the darkness. So I'm like, okay, if my soul wants to go through another initiation where we drop into the Negredo, the darkness, like, cool, let's go. You
Hmm.
know, like that's what's real. That's what's here for me right now. Um, I'm not I'm not resistant to it as much anymore. Gosh, of course I still have resistance to going into the depths. So what really supports that is other wise women who are surrounding me, who are also not with me in the depths always, but who are allies and who are like, I see you. I see the deep work you're doing. Keep going. Like you're doing great. They're not in there trying to coddle and like help me. They're just like, yo, we know. Sucks, but like you gotta go through it, you know? And so they're just holding in a way where I know I can reach out and actually get the support I need if I did need it.
Hmm.
But there's also just a deep trust in my competency from them. They're mirroring that of like, oh, your soul, like you got this, you know. And we're here, we're holding you. So I think there's that. And then also what's really been supportive for me too, Sam, is this deep remembrance of the connection between myself and Mother Earth, like land and place, and allowing myself to be nurtured and held um, in her arms feels also very necessary for me when I'm going through a lot. I just spend a lot of time in nature because there's something about nature that mirrors this process of death, life, death, the cycle. You know, nature's always going through this transition. And if nature held on, if nature didn't release, if it didn't decay, if it didn't die, there would be no fruit. There would be no life as we know it. So when you remember that this is just a natural part of the process, it becomes easier to kind of allow yourself to dissolve.
Mm. that's such a beautiful reflection that's mirrored for me too, because my journey of the feminine really started when I lived in Vancouver, and Vancouver
Yeah.
for me was this beautiful, like, I'm going to use your language of initiation into mother nature, because what's different I found about Australia versus Vancouver was that the seasons were so distinct. Like, you knew when you're
Mhm.
in autumn, you knew when you're in summer, you knew when you're in winter. Like, they're so clear, whereas like Australia, like, could be like all in one day. And I remember like walking through walking through the park on like an autumn, like, or fall day, and just like having this like strange connection to the trees of being like, oh yeah, like you're just shedding and you're going to grow back, like you're just shedding what you don't need anymore, and you're not, there's no expectations or there's no attachment as to when, but you just have this trust and a surrender that when it's the time is right, new leaves are going to form. And then I remember, like, I'd be like fasting and I'd just be sitting looking at the mountain on like in Kitsilano and just being like, oh, like I could just sit here for 3 hours and just know that this, like, all of these insights and stillness that comes from just like being still and one with nature. And it sounds so crazy and a little bit
No.
like
Huh?
off
I
planet,
love
but
it.
like it just built this relationship to what's out there, and knowing that without doing anything, it's going to do what it needs to do. And then from that point, I felt this almost this safety within my own body of
Mm.
recognizing that, like, I can let go of that control. And I remember having this plain visual of like me holding onto one mountain and trying to get to the other one, but not letting go of this one first. And it was in that moment that I literally just, I let go of, and it was
Yeah.
this thing of just being just, you 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 got to just surrender in order to let what needs to happen flow through you. And that's when the whole journey of the feminine started to crack me open. But it's because I think I felt safe enough in my body to start to go into that work, because of
Yeah.
the lessons of nature.
Absolutely. And that's the feminine
Mm.
being,
Mm.
just being.
What does
Not
being
really.
mean to you? How do you demonstrate that in your life?
No force. The opposite of force.
Mm.
Like it's it's almost feels like, it feels like embodiment. It doesn't feel like thinking, doesn't feel like needing to do anything, create, like, it just feels like living, being, fully in your body, fully present and in congruency with mind, body, heart, soul, and living in alignment with that truth. It's just, it's easy when you can actually live from that space of congruency, because when you have that level of trust, that you almost have to have that level of trust in your being, that who you are, and why you're here is real, valid, and like real, like sacred. And then when you have that, you're like, oh, okay, cool, I can just be now. And this is a new emergence for me.
Yeah.
uh, and probably, my handle has been being is beautiful for, gosh, I had that handle since I was 21. I have no, like, talk about a future self informing a past self. I was like, what does that even mean? But something about it like really latched on, and I was like, being is beautiful, yeah. And now I'm finally starting to embody that,
Mm.
and just trusting that whatever arises is what's right, what's good, what's true, what's real. That's all that matters. I'm
Yeah.
not forcing anything. I'm not trying to be anything that I'm not, which is
Mm.
cool. It's taken 30 years to get here, but here we are.
What do you what has been like a game changer for you in listening, actually hearing
Yeah.
what is actually arising? Because I've loved witnessing people's response and behaviors in isolation periods, right? Where
Mm.
all of a sudden shit's arising to the surface and you can't go anywhere. You can't avoid it anymore. And so all of a sudden there's this, oh God. And people are choosing to, like, opt in and just get curious about that or not, whatever, it's cool. But like, what has been a game changer for you in actually listening? And even if we go back to like the listening to the womb, like what, because that's such a that's such a hard thing to go, well, what am I like, what am I meant to hear, what is surfing and surfacing, and how do I know that's okay? Because am I actually hearing what's actually there? Am I
Right,
actually
right.
feeling what's actually truth?
Hmm. Yeah, this is a lifelong practice, right? Like, there's no quick answer to this. We are layered, multidimensional beings. So I always like to say, starting with cultivating self trust here is just validating everything. Is like just validating what is real, what is true for you in that moment. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to minimize that voice. You don't have to doubt it. But just like, okay, that's there. And then, over with time, with practice, with a deeper sense of clarity, I guess I'll say, um, there becomes more discernment of like, oh, that's fear talking, or that's potentially coming from an old story.
Mm,
And you start to discern what actually feels like truth and what feels maybe like some past interference.
mhm,
And in that, I I always like to say to people, like, you can't mess it up. Like, you really can't. Just live like the David White, gosh, brilliant poet. He said on this one interview he did, he said, the soul doesn't care about right and wrong. It only cares that you're walking your path. Because if you're walking your path, you're going to get the experience and the lesson and the learning that your soul is here to get. But if you're walking somebody else's path, you'll never get that.
mm,
So just no matter what, if you fall, if you trip, if you make a mistake, whatever, like at least you're living your path. And so I always like to remember that
mm.
in my own life is like, yeah, I might go down a path, but that's exactly the path I needed to go down. And you can't mess it up, and you're going to probably hit an opportunity to pivot 5,000 more times. But can you validate what is true right now? Like, key for self trust is like, what is true for me right now? And I always, when I'm feeling a lot in my body, just activation, um, I always sit down with my journal and I'm like, okay, what is true? And I just let all the truth kind of come. And I don't try to minimize or deny any of it, because most of us think that if we name a truth, we have to change our whole life. And sometimes that's true. But, at least you're naming the truth. You can still name it and not change, but at least you're naming it and not invalidating yourself and creating more splits in between truth and story.
Yeah, because then I think that directly correlates to, if you don't name it and you suppress it, right? If we're not naming it, acknowledging it, we're suppressing it, and so
Right.
therefore it's just going to get louder in ways that are going to hurt us. And so it's like, the the truck hitting you and slamming you, like it's like in some form, whether that's an illness or a shit thing that's going to happen in our life, like something that's going to make us like and shake us to pay attention. That's what's going to happen if we don't simply name it, whether we choose to lean into it or not lean into it. Like at least
Yeah.
we've recognized that it's there, and that's that whole self-awareness piece, which I think is the doorway to transformation, or the doorway to move to the next level of where you're at. You get to choose the pace of that. Like that's up to you.
Yeah.
And divine timing
So
is everything. Like there's no, I like the lesson that I keep getting is like there's no rush. There's literally no rush.
right. Why are we rushing? Where are we rushing to? That's a part of like the programming of like everything has to happen at 5 million miles per hour. It's like, slow down.
Yeah.
We're good. But
Yeah.
that's that unsafe, right? Where when you're rushing, you don't feel safe
Hmm.
because you think you need to be rushing in order to be safe, and it's like, hold on, hit the pause button.
Hmm.
There's no rush. That's like feeling safe and slow, which in stillness, which that's a big journey.
Mm, yeah. What advice do you have for people that want to move deeper into their nervous system health?
Yeah, I think psychoeducation is a really great place to start to understand what that even means and how the nervous system even works. Because from an awareness or an intellectual standpoint, it can help support this journey into healing the nervous system when you understand it.
Mm.
So I like the work of Our Body Keeps the Score,
Oh,
Peter
so
Levine.
good.
So good. Waking Tiger.
Mm.
NARM. There's also another one. Her name is Deb Dana. I forgot the name of the book, but it's so good. Which really goes into understanding how the nervous system operates so that you can have at least an awareness around um, naming it. Because
Mhm.
when you have the words, you can start to name it. And then when you can name it, you can kind of calm it down. And then, of course, depending on your life experience and maybe the support you need or feel called to, hiring a somatic experiencing practitioner or working with the body in different ways. There's a
Mhm.
lot of beautiful pleasure, alchemy options, dance,
Mhm.
tap therapy, pleasure practice. I don't, everyone's cup of tea is different here depending on what they need, but
Mhm.
um, getting back into the body.
Yeah, yeah. What I'm like musing on and loving and falling into the deliciousness of at the moment is um what I was calling the honeypot ritual before I realized that honeypot was another word for pussy. So I'm not just like over here all up in that. But what I was calling the honeypot
Love
ritual
it.
was um just setting a morning ritual and an evening ritual in
Yeah.
space between wakefulness and sleep and wakefulness of just simply being. And I've never been one in my life just to be able to even be. Like, I've been trying to do being, like I've been trying to do something about being. Ugh, anyway, I
I love
finally
it.
discovered this being practice accidentally, of where I just simply, like, my evening one's so delicious. It's like candle lit, and I'm just
Right.
lying in my bed. Like, I'm just simply allowing whatever happens, daydreams or visions or journaling or singing or humming or movement or whatever wants to come out. I'm just simply there. And it's
Mm.
so deeply healing and delicious and life changing that, like, I don't know what the heck I've been doing for the last few, like, it's like I've been trying to do this thing that
I
it's like
do.
yeah, oh, it's so
I
beautiful.
do. I do know. And I love that practice actually. That's something my SE practitioner gave me
Mm,
because she was like, "What about when you first wake up? Are you like going like frantic?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "You should probably look at that." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're right." Like, why do I feel this desire to go, go? It's so conditioned into us. Like,
yeah.
go, go, go. So I love that permission or that container or ritual that you're creating to really not do that, to just be and not rush and slow down. It's safe to be slow.
Mm,
It's beautiful.
safe to be slow. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. I'd love to for you to share where people can, like, follow your journey and to be inspired by your work.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks so much for having me. And it's always so much fun talking with you. It's been a minute. Um, you can find me mostly these days on Instagram at Being is Beautiful. I've kind of been exploring my relationship with social media lately, which is, a whole nother conversation, but most of the time that's where I'm at. If I'm on technology, I'm trying to get back to the land. So having a little bit of some cognitive dissonance around my relationship to technology,
Yeah, there you
but
go.
it's good.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And do you have any last things that you feel is alive for you to share? Anything you want to kind
Mm,
of finish up with, or share an insight or a piece of your medicine? Because I really appreciate you today, and I really appreciate having you share, because this whole experience and this whole container that we've been sitting in has made me feel that everything that's coming out of your mouth, and not even just your mouth but your energy is piercing through, is just feels like medicine to me. And it feels like I've been sitting in a ceremony of sorts, because it's hitting me in so many different cells of remembering. And it's
mm,
the way in which you transmit that frequency of your message, not just through your words but through your energy, and it literally feels like medicine. So thank you so much for sharing that, because it's potent.
that means so much to me. Thank you. I truly received that. The only thing that's rising to the surface for me is like, you are sacred. You are so flipping sacred. Life is a ritual. It's like ceremony. Like, let's remember and come together, um, and honor not only self, other, but also Mother Earth. And I think when we reconnect to Mother Earth and the whole circle of life, we heal such deep attachment wounds. We've been making market and state economy mother and father, and our mother is Mother Earth and Father Sun. Like without those, we don't have life or sustainability on this planet. So I think when we reconnect to that, life just gets more simple, more beautiful, and I'm here for that.
I'm here for that too. Thank you, Kylie.
Thanks, Sam. So much love.